Hello, RotoBallers! It's Wildcard Weekend, and many of you are locked into fantasy playoff leagues. So let's take a look at the NFC and drop some stats and facts regarding players you can trust for your fantasy lineups. Let's head over to Dallas here, where the Green Bay Packers are headed to Dallas Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and they enter this contest, the Cowboys do, as 7-point favorites. This is one of those throwback games that carries that playoff nostalgia with it. The Cowboys and the Packers have combined for 9 Super Bowl championships, with the Cowboys winning 5, not to mention one of the greatest games ever played in NFL playoff history, the 1967 NFL Championship game, better known as the Ice Bowl. Now the Packers, they have been as hot as any team on the offensive side of the ball, but if they want to pull off the upset here, they have to find a way to stop CeeDee Lamb, who is coming off a 135-catch, 1,749-yard campaign, both of which are among the top 10 statistical seasons of all time, not to mention 14 touchdowns. Lamb finished the season scoring a touchdown in 9 straight games, and since week number 8, he has produced 1,274 yards and 12 total touchdowns on 107 receptions since week 8. Even with Jair Alexander in coverage, Lamb is a must start, as is Dak Prescott, who led the league with 36 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, if we do get plenty of that Lamb versus Alexander, which I am hoping for, then Brandon Cooks becomes a cheaper option as far as DFS is concerned if you're looking for a player to hit at less of a cost. Now, we all know how good Prescott to Lamb has been this season, but Jordan Love had the second most passing touchdowns this season with 32, while being picked off on just 11 occasions on his way to a top 7 passing season there with 4,149 yards. For perspective, the only quarterbacks to do what Love did in their first season as a full-time starter were Kurt Warner with the Rams and Patrick Mahomes. In playoff leagues where the format is one and done, Love is an attractive option as he projects to score well for fantasy, and the Cowboys, they're projected to win. Perhaps the key to the upset is Love protecting the ball and getting a healthy dose of a healthy Aaron Jones this week in both the run and the pass game. Dallas, they've allowed just over 1,900 rushing yards this season and have allowed 4.2 yards per carry. It's really hard to trust any of these wide receivers for the Packers. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs have all been battling injuries. Not to mention the additions of Bo Melton and Dontavian Wicks have allowed Love to spread the ball around. Great for the Packers, not so great for fantasy. Last week against a tough Bears defense, it was Aaron Jones who was the star of this offense, hauling in 5 passes for 30 yards and churning out 111 yards on the ground on 22 attempts, making him a great option in fantasy. Not to mention Dontavian Wicks there, 2 touchdowns. So where are those touchdowns going to go? I don't know. It's tough to predict. Fade these wide receivers for Green Bay. Jordan Love, good start. Aaron Jones, good start. The rest, I'm kind of putting on the back burner. Maybe you can fire in a little bit of a Tyler Kraft there while we're at it. Now heading over to Detroit, where the Rams are taking on the Lions Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And the Lions, they open up as 3.5-point favorites. Matthew Stafford returns home, but I wouldn't exactly expect him to receive a warm welcome, as the Lions are looking for their first playoff win since 1991 and just their 4th playoff win since 1957. They will be counting on that Jared Goff revenge narrative playing out on their sideline. Regardless, someone is getting revenge one way or another. Expect plenty of points in this contest, as the over-under opened up at 51.5, and Vegas, they are expecting a high-scoring game in this one, and you probably should too. Detroit enters this game scoring 27.1 points per game, which is the 5th most in the league, while the Rams sit 8th, averaging 23.8. From a fantasy perspective, it's tough not to start Kyren Williams this week. Williams ran for 1,144 yards on just 228 attempts while scoring 12 times on the ground. He also added 200-plus yards there in the passing game on 48 targets while producing all this in just 12 contests. But the Lions defensively have been stout against the position when it comes to fantasy, allowing a league-low 15.67 fantasy points per game this season. And over the last 4 weeks, they've been even better, allowing just 11.43 and less than 290 total yards of offense and just a single touchdown over that period. Expect the Rams to attack the Lions secondary that has allowed the 3rd most fantasy production to wide receivers this season and the most over the last 4 weeks. A 4-week period that has seen opposing wide receivers produce over 1,000 yards on 64 receptions. Puka Nacua just set a rookie record for receptions with 105 and receiving yards at 1,486, both of which are top 10 this season amongst pass catchers. Nacua now has 6 straight games with 10 or more fantasy points, and the Rams, they also have this other pass catcher that you might know him, Cooper Kupp, the last wide receiver to win the Triple Crown. But the man responsible for all this magic here in the passing game is Matthew Stafford, who's quietly thrown for nearly 4,000 yards while tossing 24 touchdowns while averaging 7.6 yards per attempt this season. From week 12 to 17, Stafford was the quarterback 6 in fantasy, averaging 20.8 fantasy points per game, so you can expect that trend to continue this week against a weak Lions secondary. Now, as bad as the Lions secondary has been over the last 4 weeks, the Rams secondary has been nearly as bad. While Detroit is allowing 51.3 fantasy points per game over last month, the Rams have been allowing 48.45, which is the third most over that same period, and have allowed 55 receptions, resulting in 7 touchdowns and 782 yards. Not only is Jared Goff looking for some revenge, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is looking to take out some of his own frustration there after becoming a Pro Bowl snub despite 119 receptions and 1,515 yards. Also, like the Lions, while the pass defense for the Rams has been bad, the run defense over the last 4 weeks has been solid, allowing just 14.43 fantasy points per game. Only the Lions and the Buccaneers have been better. This means I'm a little hesitant to start David Montgomery this week, but I do like Jahmyr Gibbs as a flex, especially with Sam Laporta likely going to miss this one. And finally, the last game there on Wildcard Weekend for the NFC, the Eagles at the Buccaneers, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, the Eagles, they open up this as 2.5-point road favorites, but considering that the Eagles have lost back-to-back games to the Giants and the Cardinals and have lost 5 of their last 6 contests, I'm not sure they should be favored against anybody at this time. The Eagles' offense has struggled, but it's not necessarily the bigger issue in Philadelphia. Although Devonta Smith missing some action and A.J. Brown twisting his knees are reasons for concern, the Eagles' defense has not been good. Last season, Philadelphia was top 3 in sacks, interceptions, quarterback hits, and tackles for loss. This season, they are 20th in sacks, 25th in interceptions, 27th in tackles for loss, and 15th in quarterback hits. To make matters worse, they lost corner Sidney Brown to a Week 18 ACL tear. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, plus 23 when it comes to point differential. That's actually better than the Philadelphia Eagles, plus 5. And if I look at this from a fantasy perspective, you have to feel good about Rachaad White, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Baker Mayfield for the Buccaneers. This season, no team has allowed more fantasy points to opposing wide receivers than the Eagles, who are allowing 44.64 per game and have allowed 3,337 yards and 27 touchdowns to the position. Water is wet and Mike Evans finishes with 1,000 yards. That's the only guarantees we have year in and year out when it comes to fantasy. And Evans, he finished this year with 1,255 yards and a league best 13 touchdown receptions. Everyone's talking about CeeDee Lamb. Everyone's talking about Tyreek Hill, and rightfully so. But let's give Mike Evans some credit here. And let's also give Baker Mayfield some credit here, because not only was Mike Evans a 1,000-yard receiver, but Chris Godwin also topped 1,000 yards this season, as Baker Mayfield finished 9th in passing, topping 4,000 for the first time in his career. Mayfield, he's a solid start this week against the Eagles team that is allowing 16.5 fantasy points over the last 4 weeks to opposing quarterbacks and more than 20.5 over the course of the season. The Eagles, they started this season off strong against the run, but in the last 4 weeks, they are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to backs and have given up 549 total yards and 7 touchdowns. Rachaad White fell just 10 yards shy of 1,000 this season on the ground, but his best attribute, it comes in the passing game as a pass catcher, where he hauled in 64 of 70 targets this season for 549 yards. Now, I don't see how this Eagles team is going to be able to stop this Buccaneers offense with all these pass catching options that the Buccaneers present them. They are all viable fantasy football plays this week. As for the Eagles, you'll want to start Jalen Hurts, and you probably should. He's the safest option on this Eagles team. He's the safest option that you can present to any fantasy manager this week as far as the Eagles are concerned. Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, they're banged up. And if neither one of them can go, maybe Quez Watkins has a little bit of sleeper appeal. With Brown and Smith missing action, Dallas Goedert and DeAndre Swift, they were obsolete last week. Now, Tampa Bay, to their credit, has allowed just 13.35 fantasy points per game to backs over the last 4 weeks, so I'm passing on DeAndre Swift, and their pass defense has actually been pretty good, allowing the 13th fewest fantasy points over that time, limiting to wide receivers to 28.6 fantasy points, which is less than ideal for an offense that's already struggling. Outside of Jalen Hurts, I don't think you can trust anyone on this Eagles offense for fantasy right now, but who you can trust is the RotoBaller. So head over to rotoballer.com and the RotoBaller Discord channel for all the latest fantasy football news, because this video, it's being recorded on Monday and plenty can still happen. And make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button right here on the RotoBaller YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the fantasy football analysis coming your way.